Hey everybody, this is Nate. You're watching WASD 20. Today I am here with a little review of the D&D Spellbook cards. And you might remember I did a review a while back, but this is the second run of the cards. There are some changes they've made. These have been out for a long time, but I finally picked up a non-original deck. And I thought I would do a little review and comparison with the original deck so people can see some of the differences. So the original decks that I bought, which I will put a little link to on the screen right about now, are these ones right here. I got the Paladin deck and the Cleric deck. And while it would be nice to do a review of in comparison of the exact same deck, I didn't really want to buy two of these. And I really did want the Arcane deck. So it'll be a little different, but we'll be able to see some of the similarities and differences between the original run and the second run. Now, the only way that I can tell a difference between them by the outside of the box, they look almost identical, is that the second run, if you look by the barcode right here, you can see it does say version 2 right there. So that's the only way I could tell by the outside of the box. Also on Amazon, it wasn't really clear. There were reviews that were clearly for the original run, but when I purchased the product, I was pretty sure it was going to be the second run because they've been out for over a year now, I think. And sure enough, it was the second run. So a little hard to tell, but I was hopeful that if I opened them up and they weren't the right ones, I could probably return them. Because I really did want to get the version 2 because there are some advantages to them. So let's talk about what some of those differences are and actually get down and get a look at the cards here. So a little information about these cards. They are manufactured by Gale Force 9 through an agreement, a licensing agreement with Wizards of the Coast. They're not an official Wizards of the Coast product, but they are officially licensed, I think, is how you would describe it. This is the Arcane deck, and this is the largest deck. It comes with, I don't know how many cards, a lot. Something like twice as many as the Cleric deck that I have here. That's because it includes all the spells for Wizard, Warlock, and Sorcerer. Oh, here we go, 231 as opposed to 106. So yeah, a little more than twice as many as the Cleric deck, and probably over 4 times as many as something like the Paladin deck. So these are the only 3 that I have now. But yeah, they retail, I think the Arcane deck retails for about $19.99. I got them on Amazon for about 18 bucks, I think it was, or 17. So yeah, Amazon's got some really good prices on these things now. And I'll put an Amazon link in the description below. You can check them all out there for all the various classes. Of course, your local game shop probably also has them, so check them out there. That's where I got these original run cards, actually, was my local game shop. Because at the time, Amazon actually wasn't selling them for, well, they were selling them, but they were kind of in and out and seemed to be actually more expensive than other places. So I'm glad that's changed because Amazon's super convenient for me, as I don't really have a game shop super close to my house that sells much of this stuff. One of the places that you originally would have to buy them was the actual Gale Force 9 website, which is just awful. It's a terrible website, and it hasn't improved. It's improved a little bit since I originally got the other cards, but it hasn't improved very much, so it's nice to have other options for buying them. Gale Force 9, seriously, get to work on your website. Modernize it, update it. At least on your product page, have an add to cart option so you don't have to go to a separate store page. And honestly, on the store page, I looked around for about 3 minutes and I couldn't find the D&D Spellbook cards. So, yeah, kind of weird. Alright, but enough about that. Let's talk about the actual cards here. So when I opened them up, they were wrapped in plastic wrap. Each of these stacks was. And you can see there's a divider down the middle there. Pretty flimsy divider. Pretty flimsy box overall, but it'll do. And once I got the plastic open, a lot of the cards were stuck together, and you can see that some of them, they still are pretty stuck together. If I fan them out even, like this one won't fan out. Look at that. Oh, there we go. I got it. And these are like 3 or 4. That's 4 stuck together there. So that's kind of an issue. But once you use them once with the original deck, I found that's not an issue anymore. Once you use them once, you unstick them, they're unstuck, and you can easily fan them out without a problem. So very minor issue there. But just like the originals, that is something to be aware of. Other specifics of the cards here, if we compare, you can notice the rounded corners now on the second run, whereas the original had very sharp corners that, well, you can see kind of get bent pretty easily. So I only used these probably 2 or 3 times, and I know I already have some bent corners on my Paladin deck. The cards are still very nice and glossy and feel good. You can write on them with a dry erase marker or wet erase marker, and it erases pretty easily. So that's kind of a nice thing to remember, that you can take notes on these cards. You can see we've got the arcane symbols on the back of these, and you still have the spell level. Here's my Cleric symbol with the spell level, so pretty similar there. Another kind of first impression, as soon as I opened the box, these did feel a little bit more flexible than the original run. At first I thought they were actually thinner, but I did a stack of 20 of these against 20 of the original run, and they were the exact same thickness. It's just that these do feel a little more flexible compared to the stiffness of the original run cards. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. I don't mind that they're a little more flexible, but just something to be aware of. One of the things that they really did need to address from the original run was the lack of indication for concentration spells, and that's something they have addressed and fixed. So you can see that this little C right here on the card for duration does indicate that it is a concentration spell that can be held for up to 1 minute, whereas on the original run they did not indicate that. Now you can usually assume that if it says up to a certain amount of time it was concentration, but that actually wasn't always the case. That was like 95% true, but not always. So now we have that little indication, which is a really nice thing. One thing I did notice when I opened up these cards is that some of them were, and there are some little divots out of some of them. So you can see this right here, just kind of a little ding, and that was true of quite a few in the beginning of the stack. And so that's kind of a bummer, but overall they're in pretty good shape. The box too wasn't packed super well. It seems like it got a little bit beat up right here and such, but oh well, not a big issue for me. That's just kind of the way it is sometimes buying stuff like this on Amazon. One thing to be aware of that I have seen quite a few people complain about is that on the arcane deck there's no indication on the card of what kind of spell it is, what class of spell it is. So is it a wizard spell? Is it a sorcerer spell? Is it a warlock spell? There's no way to tell just by looking at the card. You actually have to look at the list in the book. Now, some would say, well, it doesn't really matter because there's so much overlap. You know, an arcane spell could be used by all 3 classes, but still I think having some kind of indicator on there would be nice. I think, for example, the Princes of the Apocalypse deck, those cards actually did have an indication of class via a little symbol, if I remember correctly, and something like that would have been nice here on the arcane deck, as it is used by at least 3 of the classes. Another thing I've heard people complain about to some degree with these cards is that they don't really have the whole spell on all of the cards. You can see that this one right here, Dominate Person, a 5th level enchantment, says see page 235, and so that's an indication that to read the full description of the spell you would need to go to page 235 in the player's handbook, because they just couldn't fit it all in this card. So you know, that's something that a lot of them do have. See page 236 this one says, but a lot of them do. See page 226, a lot of them do fit completely on the card. Most of them do, I would say. But that is something to be aware of. One final thing to note is that there were typos on some of the original cards, and a lot of those have been fixed. And there were actually 2 spells completely missing from decks that they should have been in. One of them is this one right here. Mislead was not in the arcane deck, which is a wizard spell. So yeah, big problem there. I think there was one in the paladin deck too, so I'm probably missing that one. And yeah, so it's, of course they have fixed those things. The cards are really nice. I like them. You absolutely do not need them, but they are something that I want to have, and they're just handy to have, especially as a DM, having them at the table. Just grab a couple spell cards for an enemy that you know that the players will likely be encountering. It's just kind of a handy thing for me as a DM, and it's a nice thing to offer my players too, that it's an easier way to keep track of spells. I know that personally playing a cleric, it was really nice because a cleric can pick from the entire list of cleric spells at the beginning of a day. it might be a little less necessary for some of the other classes. You know, a wizard's kind of got a set spell book, so maybe not quite as necessary, but still something that I think is nice to have at the gaming table. So these are the Gale Force 9 Spellbook cards for D&D 5th edition. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this little review and comparison with the old deck and the original run. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you down below. And yeah, that's about it for this one, everybody. Take care, happy gaming, go cast some spells.